I've been through every single team on FIFA, found the average rating for every single team, and then compared it to that league's average rating to find the 10 most underpowered and difficult teams to do FIFA 22 career modes with. We're going to be going all around the world with this one, with teams on 3 different continents. So let's get started straight away with the 10th hardest save. That's going to be Halmstad's BK in Sweden. On average, a Halmstad's player will just be 59 overall, compared to the league average of 63, and the best team in the league having a 68 average squad. You are going to be outclassed in most matches. They have a couple of teams that are similar in rating to them, but this 7% difference between you and the average is going to give you a little bit of trouble at the start, especially as you're going to be relying on mid 50 rated players for some of your starting 11. The next position on the list is in Mexico, and it's going to be Puebla FC. So they've got a 64 overall team, which would be good in the previously mentioned Swedish league, but in the Mexican league you actually need to be nearly 70 to be an average player. If you want Puebla to be the best team in Mexico, you'll need to on average increase the overall ratings of your players by 11 points, which is actually a lot more difficult than it sounds, especially as Mexico doesn't actually have that much money to sign new players with. Moving away from Mexico and heading back to Scandinavia, the 8th hardest save I found is actually in Norway. Mjøndalen were actually only relegated in last position 4 days before this video came out, so it's no real surprise that they are the worst team in the league on FIFA as well. With an average rating of just over 59, they are actually slightly worse than Halmstad's from Sweden, while being in the Norwegian league, which has a slightly higher overall rating on average than the Swedish league, and that's why they've ranked a couple of places higher in terms of this list. When you consider that their best known player is known for making funny faces on his FIFA cards, it's no real surprise that this team is not that successful, but if you want a difficult save with a team that won't be on next year's game, go for this Norwegian team. Going to the second worst league in the entire game now, you've got Longford Town, who are the worst team in Ireland. They're actually the second worst team in the entire game, with only a single team from India being worse. So Longford Town have an average overall of 54, which is absolutely dreadful. The average for the league isn't actually that much better, but at 58 it's a whole 7% better than them on average. The best team in the Irish league is actually 10 points better than Longford Town, which is the same overall difference between Norwich City and Manchester City, however at a much lower rating, which is an incredible percentage difference. If you fancy a really difficult challenge, then go for Longford Town and see if you can win the Champions League, because their starting 11 has 1 58 rated players and 2 57 rated players, everyone else 56 to 54. An absolutely incredibly bad team with almost no transfer budget and a really difficult challenge. So now we're going to be looking at one of the 2 major leagues that's actually on this list, and if you've been paying attention to the Bundesliga, you can probably guess that it's going to be Fürth, who currently have 4 points from 16 games. So they're absolutely outclassed, as you'd expect, not only by teams like Bayern Munich, but even teams like Bielefeld and Bochum are much better than Fürth this season. It is only their second go at being in the Bundesliga. They were relegated after 1 season in 2012 as well, so it's looking like that's going to be the case again. From having a quick look through their team, it doesn't seem like they have many FIFA ready players. Some of them have some good potential, but if you do want a good challenge, then maybe taking over Fürth, trying to make them stay in the league and then progressing up the Bundesliga could be a really fun challenge. So now we're in the top 5 for the hardest FIFA saves that you can start in career mode right now, and we're going to be heading to Peterborough in the Championship for the next team. So Peterborough got promoted last season. They have a chairman that doesn't really like spending that much money, but they do actually have an okay first 11 for the level. Almost every player is between 65 and 70 except for their star striker Johnson Clark Harris, but what really lets Peterborough down is the lack of players outside of the starting 11. They have a lot of players who are rated 50, 53, 52, 60, and this really does bring down the average of their squad. Compared to other teams in the Championship, where the average rating will be about 68, for Peterborough their average overall of a player is actually only 63. The best team in the league has an average overall of 72, so there is quite a long way to go if you think you can get Peterborough into the Premier League. Compared to some of the other teams on this list, it's not a foregone conclusion that you could get promoted with this team. It will just be very difficult, and you'll have to rely on getting the most out of your starting 11 because you do not have any other players that you can bring in and give a go. The 4th hardest team that I found is actually in Belgium. Serang are sort of a feeder club for Metz. They have a lot of players on loan from that club, and they are absolutely outclassed in the Belgian Pro League. With teams like Bruges, Genk and Antwerp all having players around 75 to 80, this team has 0 players who are 70 rated or above. Most of their team is on loan, and with an average rating of 63 compared to the league average of 68.5, you are going to be 8% worse on average in every single position against every team you come up against. When you come up against one of the bigger teams in the league who have average overalls around 72, you're actually going to be 13% worse off in every single stat and every single player of your team than these better players and better teams will be. If you want a tough challenge, and that's probably why you've clicked on this video, then I do have 3 harder than this, but Serang is definitely worth giving a go. So the only country that shows up twice on this list is actually Germany. Their 3rd division has a team that's even harder than Greuther Fürth, even if you're going to be playing against worse players. Freiburg's 2nd team that's in the 3rd division is actually one of the hardest saves you can possibly do. On average, their team is just 57.5 rated, compared to a league average of 62.5, and a best team in the league averaging 65. So this might not be as big numbers compared to some of the other leagues, but as a percentage, they're actually 8% worse than the average team and 12% worse than the best team in the Bundesliga. So this is going to be a very, very difficult save. If you're trying to keep it youth only, as Freiburg should be anyway, then no matter who you sign in a youth academy, they're probably going to be starter ready anyway. So it's going to be really tough, but again, that's why you're probably here. Give Freiburg a go if you want to be in Germany, have a road to glory and youth only save. Staying in a massive nation for football, Serie A actually has the 2nd hardest save on the game, and it's actually a pretty fun one as well. Salernitana 1919 have an average overall of just 67, which is dreadful for a top division team. However, the average in the league is 74, so that's already 7 points lower. But the best team in the league, Juventus, have an average overall of 81. So you're 14 whole ratings worse than Juventus every time you play them. This is 17% on average how much worse you're going to be every single player in every single position. Even when you're not playing the likes of Juventus, if you're playing someone like a Roma or a Lazio, you're still going to be 9% worse, which is absolutely horrific. It's going to be a really hard save because Salernitana also have barely any cash. You're going to be in a massive league with really good players, but you're going to have no cash, you're going to have no good players, and you're going to have to scrape and fight for every single point if you want to get to the top of Serie A. So, finally, it's time for 1st place, and I think you'd agree that this team is definitely worthy. With an average overall of 54, in a league where the average player is 64 rating, so already 10 behind the average, and the best team in the league is 70 overall, we have Chongqing Lianjiang Athletic. The sad thing about how bad this team is that it's actually being boosted by having a couple of Brazilians up front. So your midfield has 2 54 rated players and a 59. Your back 5 has a 53, a 55, a 64, who's one of your star players, a 58 and a 55, with a 64 in goal. You'll have no potential at all, with your best Chinese player having just 62 potential, but you're going to have to come up against teams like Guangzhou, who have Ixon, Fernando, Alan, and a bunch of other players in the 65 to 75 range. It's going to be absolutely impossible. Compared to the average, where you're going to be 12% worse on average than every single team in the league in every position, the best team in the league is actually 25% better than you in every single stat. So that's going to be so hard to overcome, especially in the first couple of seasons. If you want to try and sign a couple of big names, because I think they only are using 2 of their foreign signing players, you're still only going to manage to improve your overall by 1 or 2 points. If you want to scrap and fight for every single point, if you want a super difficult challenge, then I recommend you use this Chinese team, put real sliders on, and see if you can even get a couple of wins in the first season, because I really don't think you'll be able to manage it. If you do decide to give it a go, then absolutely let me know on Discord, Twitter, or commenting below, because I'd love to read any stories where you somehow managed to win the Chinese Cup or the Chinese League with Chongqing against teams like Shanghai, Guangzhou, or Shenhua. So it's going to be very difficult, but I know that you guys might be up to the task. Thank you all for watching this far. Hope you had fun learning about some of these really difficult teams, and I'll see you very soon for another video. Thank you and goodbye.